Hi everybody. As you know, if you've been watching for a little while, we've had a problem with spider mites in the greenhouse. So they basically cover a tree in web. And it's really hard to see, but there are all those little dots hanging out on the web. And apparently they kind of suck the life out of the leaves. So you can see how the leaves are kind of looking spotted and they just look not very green. They just look kind of lifeless. And I should have known there was something wrong back in August. There was this webbing kind of all over the stem. Now, I've never dealt with spider mites before, so this was all pretty new for me. I went and picked up some neem oil yesterday, and we're gonna see if we can treat it. What it sounds like is this tree is pretty far gone. If you can see all the webbing, it sounds like maybe it might be too late, but I'm gonna try. So in about 4 months, the trees went from looking perfectly healthy to looking like I might lose them. And they form little strings with their web. Can you see this right here? They're hanging down on a string. And that's kind of how I've noticed that they travel from one tree to the next. Because my apple tree, see how kind of burnt those leaves look? I guess that is also the work of spider mites. So a little bit about spider mites before I tell you what worked for me to get rid of them. I think it's a little bit different if you have spider mites outside versus having spider mites in your greenhouse. Spider mites are basically a parasite. They are classified as an arachnid, so related to spiders and ticks, and they do have 8 legs on their very tiny bodies. At a 50th of an inch, they are about the size of a grain of salt. The variety we've been dealing with are orange, but there are other varieties in other colors. But they all have a mouth that pierces the underside of a leaf to suck out the fluids and dry up the plant. Since they use their mouths primarily for eating, how do they breathe? They breathe through holes in their exoskeleton. Their very short life cycle means they can go from an egg to a breeding adult in as little as a week or two. And even though their lifespan of a mere 2 to 4 weeks may seem short, the females can lay as many as 300 eggs in just a few weeks. In fact, the warmer their environment, the more eggs they lay. I've never dealt with a pest that has hung on for so long and caused so much damage. Like, I'm not sure that these trees are going to make it. Normally things like, I've dealt with caterpillars on broccoli and you pick them off and they're fine. I've had aphids on my apple tree and I wash them off with some soapy water, and I might have to do that a couple times, but they don't necessarily damage the plant so badly that they're risking the life of the plant. But these spider mites were the worst. So while there are a lot of solutions that I read about, there's organic versus non-organic. We did decide to go the organic route because we were worried about harming any of the beneficial insects in the area. So we did spray in the evening, and you'll notice there are no flowers on these trees. Thank you. So I'm going to use this neem oil and spray it on the trees. It's not just a one and done kind of thing. Obviously, if I'm saying this was, let's see, when did this start? This started in August. It was about 4 or 5 months that I've been dealing with this. And they really like it hot and dry. And in the greenhouse, it is definitely hot. I wouldn't say it's always dry, but if things did get too dry, I suppose that would be their ideal environment and they would move in. Now that I put the neem oil on it, you can see better where all the little webs are. You can see all in there. And what the neem oil does is suffocate them by covering their exoskeletons with oil. The other problem with the greenhouse is when we run the fan when it's hot and dry, they can spread really easily. They have these little webs that they travel along they build webs that go from plant to plant and branch to branch, and before you know it, it's not just your apple tree that is infested with spider mites, it's your pear tree, it's your lemon tree, maybe there's some in the pepper plants. So how I used the neem oil in the beginning was I pulled the trees out of the greenhouse and I set them outside of the greenhouse and sprayed them. And it's very clear on the instructions for the neem oil that you make sure that you get both the top and the underside of the leaf, because they do hide on the underside of the leaf, and that's where they do their worst. The neem oil wasn't the thing actually that I think ultimately got rid of them, but it did help me to notice where all of the spider mites were reproducing from, what part of the tree. So there was one branch on every tree that was infested that every time I would come back after 3 days would have a bunch of orange dots on the tip of one of these branches. All right, we're doing something drastic. I've been spraying these every few days, and every time I come back I see more spider mites. And I think this is like where they're reproducing up here. So these are like the babies. I'm cutting it off. I'm gonna cut it off right here. So I knew that's where the females were reproducing. So after 2 weeks of spraying neem oil every 3 days, I just finally clipped that tip of that branch off. So, and then I got rid of it far, far away. And now I've been checking for about 2 weeks and I don't see any more. That does not mean, however, that some of the leaves that have fallen on the ground are not hiding eggs, because they can be dormant over the winter. Once it reaches, I think, below 50 degrees, approximately 50 degrees Fahrenheit, they will just stop eating, stop reproducing, and go dormant. So it's not a for sure thing that they are gone, but I have not seen them now in weeks. So it'll be something that I'm watching very, very closely. So that's what's worked for us. I hope none of you ever have to deal with this problem, because it's a little gross and it was really hard to knock back. So thank you very much for watching. I know it's been a little while since we've had a video. There's not a ton going on up here in the middle of winter in Minnesota. But if you liked this video and want to keep watching, please subscribe. It really helps our channel. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.